Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. I have a confession to make. When I went to college, I wasn't trying to become a music theorist. My goal was to be a metal singer. I wound up falling in love with my theory classes, but that little metal kid is still a part of me today, and in their honor, I wanted to look at one of the most iconic sounds in death metal, the blast beat. To most listeners, a blast beat kinda just sounds like noise. There's not a lot of internal rhythmic structure, it's just all the things you can hit as fast as you can hit them. And to be honest, that evaluation isn't far from the truth. Blast beats are purposefully chaotic. They're a cacophony, a wall of sound, and their main job is to create intensity, not complexity, but that doesn't mean they can't still be complex. Before we dive in though, I'd like to talk a bit about standard drum notation, or rather, the fact that no such thing exists. Unlike notes, there's no universally agreed upon system for which part of the staff represents which kind of drum. In order to write a piece of drum music down, you first have to provide what's called a drum key, which spells out which symbols mean what. These can get complicated, but fortunately the blast beat only really uses three things: the kick, or bass drum, which I'll write here, the snare, which is here, and the cymbal, which I'll put here. Anyway, back to hitting things. Blast beats trace their roots back to, of all places, reggae. A common rhythmic element in reggae music is the guitar skank, where the guitar plays on all the upbeats of the rhythm. This gives it a loose, bouncy feel that provides relief from the more rigid underlying pulse. This emphasis on upbeats is part of what gives reggae and ska their unique sound, and the idea found its way to European hardcore punk bands, who sped it up and turned it into a much more intense sound known as the skank beat. The skank beat, though, isn't generally considered a real blast beat. It's too slow, you can still make out the individual attacks. True blast beats come in a lot of forms, but drummer Derek Roddy breaks them into four main types. The first, called the traditional blast, is a fairly straightforward evolution of the skank beat. It just takes the same kick-snare pattern and plays it twice as fast. If we add the cymbals back in, we get this. Our first real blast beat. Some common variations include starting with a snare instead, which feels more aggressive, and moving the cymbals to the offbeats for even more chaos. The next two types rely on special playing techniques. The first is the bomb blast, which uses a double bass pedal. This is a device that allows the drummer to play the kick drum with either foot, which means they can play it twice as fast. In the bomb blast, instead of alternating between kicks and snares like the traditional blast, you play the kick with every single attack. This gives you a low, rumbling sound, not unlike a bomb going off. Sort of. Okay, it's mostly just a cool name. Speaking of cool names though, the next type is called the gravity blast. This relies on a playing technique called the gravity roll, or if you want a more accurate but less awesome name, the freehand roll. This is a complex playing technique where the drummer uses the rim of the snare like a fulcrum so that they can hit the drum twice with each downstroke, letting them play snare hits so fast it sounds like a normal two-handed drum roll. The gravity blast incorporates this technique in much the same way that the bomb blast uses double bass. Instead of alternating kicks and snares, the gravity blast has snare hits all the time. Gravity blasts also often incorporate double bass pedals, making a sort of hybrid blast, which we might call the gravity bomb. The last type is called the hammer blast, and it's my favorite. Let's go back to our traditional blast for a second. The hammer blast looks at that and says, you know what, that's still too complicated. What if we took this snare drum and just played it at the same time as everything else? That may sound a bit tame compared to our previous blasts, but that's only because this isn't the speed hammer blasts were made for. If we smash together everything we've learned about double bass pedals and gravity rolls, we can play these hammer blasts at ridiculous tempos, which is where they get their other nickname, the hyper blast. At these speeds, they resemble the gravity bomb from earlier, except with even more cymbals added in, cause why not? So those are the four primary categories of blast beats, but there's a lot of variation to be had within them. For instance, you can play with a triplet feel where each eighth note is broken up into 3/16 instead of 2, or you can add more complex rhythmic patterns inside your blast. You can also transition between different blasts to change up the feel. It's metal. There's no rules. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you want to help make these videos possible, please consider supporting 12 Tone on Patreon. You can also join our mailing list to find out about new episodes, like, share, comment, subscribe, and keep on rockin'.